Hello, hello, it's Kyle from Gentleman's Gazette. Hope you guys are ready to get some questions answered in this AMA video. Enjoy. Alright, so we're going to jump right in here to question number 1. Kyle, has your personal style changed or evolved since you've been with Gentleman's Gazette? And if so, how? I definitely feel like I've seen a bit of a shift in my personal style in terms of how I examine clothing when I'm shopping, when I'm browsing around, viewing others, and how I want to present myself. But I think at the end of the day, I'm still me. I'm still Kyle. So still going to kind of subscribe to a mixture of some sense of modern style with a casual or classic style influence, I guess is what I'm trying to say, with my own personal touches. So I've definitely seen how being around the team with Gentleman's Gazette has influenced how I, look at clothing. But I don't think that I necessarily have completely shifted. I'm still myself. Question number 2. What kind of fit do you prefer? Fuller cut, slimmer cut, somewhere in the middle? And who do you take inspiration from when planning your ensembles? Thank you all at Gentleman's Gazette, and keep up the good work. Well, thank you for the question. I think when it comes to what kind of fit do I prefer, it's kind of a loaded answer. I like on the surface things that are somewhat form-fitting, not ridiculous, not necessarily like it's been spray painted on, but I think that if it's got to have some shape to it, that's usually where I like to go. I do recognize that things shift over time. We're currently, at the time of filming this, starting to see some of the shift happening now, where things getting a little bit fuller in cut, a little bit higher in rise, pleats on pants, things like that coming back around. So I understand that things like that do shift, but I like things that have a little bit of shape to them personally. I think when it comes to who would I take inspiration from, difficult to answer because there's a lot of people. I think there are people locally that I maybe grew up around, and that's what kind of contributed to why I like things to be somewhat trim. And then there are people on like an international level. Maybe they're in a fashion magazine or something, and they just look like $1 million all the time. But that's the silhouette that they always like to carry and how they present themselves. In terms of who, I would say I don't have a good name top of mind, but I think back to like even in the 90s, Ralph Lauren ads. Things were just well cut. Things seemed to be proportionate in the shoulders, but they were not a sack. They weren't oversized necessarily into the 2000s as well too. That's what I kind of think about when I like to put myself together, and then I kind of enhance it for myself if I want to take it a step further. But aspect here in terms of ensembles, I mean, I also kind of like to kind of mix things up. So if I'm going for a more preppy or more modern or more classic, outfit, that might contribute to how I'm kind of changing up the shape a little bit. As of recently, I've had a couple of suits made that are a little bit longer in the jacket, a little bit more natural and unconstructed in terms of the shoulder and chest area, and a little bit wider at the ankle as opposed to trim and high at the ankle. So I'm just trying to mix it up a little bit, have a little bit more of a unique look, and see how that balances out for my physique. But I'm enjoying playing around and kind of seeing what works for me now. All right, question number 3. How do you choose a color palette that best complements you? Example, earth tones or pastels, or low contrast versus high contrast? Great question. I think you kind of have to look at your own skin tone. Where do you live? And what's your workplace or where you're going to be wearing said outfit? What's going to make the most sense? So if I lived hypothetically in a tropical area, I'd probably be adopting a lot more bright, sometimes pastels, but even brighter tones because of my skin tone too. I'd probably be able to get away with a lot more vibrancy because of where I live and the temperature. And what I do for work, I think it makes a little bit more sense to lean into neutrals and earth tones. And then when it's warmer, maybe adopt some brighter things here and there. But I usually don't dive into like neons or things like that very much personally. So looking at your skin tone, are you someone who's got some cooler undertones, some warmer undertones? What will complement that? There's a lot of great resources online that will help you kind of navigate that world so you don't put yourself into a pickle where you're wearing something that completely crashes against you. And in terms of high contrast versus low contrast, again, I'm thinking about where you're going to be wearing that outfit. What's going to make the most sense where it's not going to be a distracting combination is something that I would think about. All right, guys, question number 4. Do you have a preferred pattern for your suits and jackets? Again, I cannot give a straight answer. I do, but I don't at the same time. So, for example, I like to wear stripes, as you can see. And so when it comes to jackets and suits in particular, I would say something subtle, but if it's going to be a prominent pattern, probably a stripe. If it's going to be a blazer or jacket of some kind, I would probably prefer some kind of a check or a plaid, just because it gives me some more play with how I can manipulate that jacket into other outfits. So if it's a striped jacket by itself, I kind of feel like it's missing the pants in my mind. If it is a checked jacket in some capacity, then I feel like I can kind of pull from the 3-4 other colors in that jacket and mix that with, a navy denim, a trouser of some kind, and contrast in color, but that is cohesive to that jacket and it helps to build the outfit. Now, part 2 to that question, do you have a pattern preference for shirt and tie patterns? I would say for shirts as well, I'm a big fan of stripes, but I also like checks, buffalo checks, ties. Ironically, I like paisleys from time to time. I don't wear them very often, but I think like some kind of a rep stripe is always a good go-to when in doubt with like a solid suit or something, just to kind of break it up and give yourself some visual interest up top. But I don't necessarily feel like I wear ties frequently enough that I could really give a strong, like, honest answer. But I think for visual interest, I like a nice, luxurious, somewhat even iridescent pattern and paisley on the tie. It's kind of fun. All right, guys. Question number 5. What is your personal opinion of the Pachuco style? I don't feel like that is something that I've got a lot of experience in personally, nor do I feel like I would probably be able to pull that off. But for those who are able to make it work for their body type, and have the flexibility with maybe what they do or where they go to pull something like that off, more power to you. I don't really feel like it's for me, though. Question number 6. What first got you interested in classic menswear? I would say it's probably going to be a combination of seeing people in my own life wear suits, whether that be from church, whether that be from weddings, funerals, all of the above. There's all of these different places that I would see people in suits. Maybe I didn't always enjoy, in retrospect, how it fit. Some people wore things slim, some people wore things really boxy, but in general, just seeing everyone put together and how they carried themselves had an influence. And I definitely feel like there was a time where I was poring over a lot of menswear magazines and just books in general, where I'd be interested in kind of seeing how things like that were put together. And I think you kind of find those glimpses of how things are put together and they resonate with you a little bit. And so I think that was probably something for a while that when I was probably in my teens, would look at a lot. Esquire, GQ, all these different places and other resources like that. There were books even too, I think things from Alan Flusser. Just there's a lot of places that I would see things from like a classic standpoint or more modern standpoint, and that helped certainly kind of put some images in my mind of how I wanted to present myself when I started to wear suits. All right, number 7. What's your fragrance rotation? And also, top 5 men's fragrances of all time. Tough question. All right. I can definitely answer the first part a little bit easier. Top 5 of all time. I'm still discovering new ones to this day, and I've been introduced to even some new ones in like the last year, which are incredible. Some aren't from America, some are from other countries that I just had no idea about. And when I learned about them, they're just kind of totally brushed aside everything else that I, was enjoying. So, but in terms of what my current rotation looks like, it's a mixture of some Tom Ford. What's the other one that I've been wearing recently? There is a fragrance that was introduced to me recently. It's a particular collection, and the name of that place is Killain. So I've been enjoying some of their fragrances recently. I'll have to get back to you guys. I don't remember all of the different names. Caught me off guard, but I can picture the bottle in my head. I'll have to bring it in one time. But there's a few others that I've been introduced to recently that I've just really been enjoying. A lot of European fragrances, a lot of things that you maybe are not going to easily find at your local like Sephora or something like that. Like you might need to go to an actual fragrance house directly or go to a more reputable fragrance counter at a department store if they carry those types of things, or go to them directly even overseas if you're able to get it shipped in, if you live not in that country. But I would say if you're looking stateside, Tom Ford has a lot of great ones, in particular things that have a lot of leather undertones to them. I've really been enjoying. All right, guys, next question. Hair care routine. I've tried shaving bald, but it's a pain to maintain. All right, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think it's a little bit about the individual, your hair texture, and how much time you want to dedicate to maintenance. So for me, this is something that I'll probably re-buzz down, if you will, twice a week or so. and how detailed you get with it is dependent on the tools you decide to use. So I think that if you've got a bit of a routine, it doesn't need to be very difficult. In my case, in my hair growth, twice a week, 3 times a week, if I really wanted to be on top of it more, is probably all I would really need to maintain. If you're really going at it from like a fully shaved perspective, where you're going to buzz everything down and then go through and lather and fully shave with a razor, that's a whole different concept. And I'm personally not trying to do that either. I can see how that can be pretty frustrating to have to do every 5 minutes. But if that's something that you're interested in, I do know that people do that kind of thing every day, every other day. But I too, like yourself, want to keep it as low maintenance as possible. So for me, I typically just buzz it down to the lowest level. All right, next question. What was my first hat? All right. Now, first, I don't know if I could speak to necessarily first, but at least the first that I can remember is probably going to be some kind of a casual cap of some kind. We wore a lot of baseball caps growing up, and I'm still interested in those too, and a lot of beanies, generally for warmth. But as those have kind of increased in trendiness over the years, I mean, those have kind of kept their place in my wardrobe from time to time too when it's cold outside. So I would say it's a combination of caps and beanies for myself personally. I have my eyes right now on a fedora. I think that because of the shape of my head, I do want to go for something that is custom, and I'm eyeballing some places that will be able to provide that where it's not going to look weird. I want to find a shape that works for my personality and my head shape and everything too, but that is of interest to me. I have yet to get something like that. So next time maybe I'm traveling, maybe I'll find a place that has that as an opportunity. But right now, a lot of caps and a lot of beanies. Next, taking into account the statement that you can never be overdressed, when is it appropriate to be more conservative and not use a pocket square or boutonniere? Is being dapper all the time too much? Okay, it's a great question. I'm going to do my best to not get myself in trouble with the Team Gentleman's Gazette. Just kidding. No, I think that you can definitely find those times to, not wear pocket square or boutonniere. You don't necessarily maybe always need to do that, but I think it's also about where you're going to be wearing this particular outfit and your personality, right? Now, for me, I wear a lot of pocket squares over ties and probably over boutonnieres, just because that tends to work best for me and what I do day to day. I think that if you want to, have all of the different options on, by all means, add that personality and panache. I like things to sometimes be a little bit more understated, and that's why for me, a nice pocket square, whether it be a clean, plain white one, or a really, fluid, silky with a tons of patterns and motifs on it, and that's kind of doing the tucking, if you will, on the front half of my outfit, then that might be where I lean, but that also works a little bit best for me and what I do day to day. All right, next question. Considering the advancement in making clothing, what new trends might we see in fashion? It's a good question. Technology is advancing very quickly. We're seeing all kinds of things. We're seeing, the ability with AI to affect how we can design particular things for people. So there's a lot going on. I would hope that the modeling gets better when it comes to bespoke clothing or made to measure, that we'll get more options with other kinds of fabrication to kind of get people what they're looking for a little bit easier, a little bit faster. Things that could be maybe following the shape of the body a little bit tighter, that don't need to necessarily be as refined as much. That'd be of interest. And then how does that play into, classic menswear versus fast fashion? There's a lot going on. So I'm curious to see where it's going to go to. But I think for me and what I wear day to day, with suits and blazers and things like that too, I'm curious to see how, the additions of that new technology makes it a little bit easier to get something of a closer fit, or a more comfortable fit with something that's got some more give to it, a little more comfort, becomes more of a reality for everyday people who are not necessarily looking to wear synthetic things, that have a lot of stretch to them. Like how do we make that work for people? Even for shirts, I've had a lot of people ask me about shirts and fit of shirts. How do you get something that's going to be somewhat darted, if you will, in a more easier fashion? I hope in time that that's something that becomes more of a reality. All right, next question. Is anyone in my family a style inspiration to me? Why or why not? And what did that look like for me growing up? Great question. I have to wonder if this is one of my relatives asking this question. I don't know. No, just kidding. But I definitely feel like, yeah, my family did inspire me in some capacity. I definitely think I take things in a slightly different direction, but we do have our similarities in how we put things together. My parents, in particular, are both very stylish people, but at the same time, how they present themselves can sometimes maybe be more monochromatic sometimes than I would like to be. Maybe I want some more earth tones involved, but it depends on, I think the mood and where they're going, what I'm doing, where I'm going. So there's some differences in people's personalities. Grandparents as well were probably, I would say, the bigger influences. And I think now that we're all getting older, siblings, kind of seeing how people's personalities come through and how they put themselves together, even though I might not carbon copy their exact look, there are things about how they put things together that I can kind of say, hey, that's kind of cool. I might want to try that sometime. So, yeah, I do come from a stylish family, and I think that in their own way, they've all had an influence on me, and I'm sure maybe I have to them as well too. Chelsea boots or monk straps? It's not fair, okay? Because I like both. I have been wearing, I think, boots more over the last few years, um, but I love a good monk strap. I think I like a double monk strap more personally, and I think that as long as it's a comfortable footbed and that the design and or color is in line with what's going to work best for you to give you a lot of options, then it's a fun look. But I think that overall, because I like to mix so many different style elements between classic and casual, for some reason, Chelsea lace-up boots, just boots in general, have kind of been more of what I've been absorbing into my wardrobe over the last few years. All right, next question. Are there any colors you feel especially confident in? I feel like you really shine in burgundy. Well, thank you. I feel like forest green would suit you as well. You are not lying. Yes, I would agree with you. Just earthy colors like that are certainly things that I do gravitate towards. Lots of blues, but tans, creams, burgundies, forest greens as well too, like that, like you mentioned. I've got a suit like that I've had for years, which I've repeatedly gotten a lot of compliments on. Occasionally sage, so just things like that will kind of complement and work with my skin tone fairly well. Certain purples and plum colors, even like a mustard yellow. I mean, I just like things that have some warmth to them overall, if you can kind of tell by the list here. And so fall is kind of my favorite time to get dressed. The rest, orange, I mean, I like things that have some warmth to them. So if it looks like it, was on the ground in a forest in the fall, that color scheme is probably going to work for my closet. All right, guys, next question. Now, who or what has inspired your personal style? In addition to what I've said before with, family members and things like that too, if I look at like a general brand concept, I always kind of keep a torch for Ralph Lauren. I don't know why, I just really like it. Paul Stewart's, that brand in general, and how they like to put things together, and how I've seen the general silhouettes of how they present their suits. I think in our current era in the world of influencers and people like that, there are people who I've, been able to watch evolve over the years, and I do appreciate. Sometimes I just kind of have to look at a distance and say, hey, I appreciate that, but I know full well that we're not the same body type, so I don't really try to adapt what they're necessarily trying to advertise. And then others are maybe more in line with my physique, and I can kind of look to that and say, like, hey, I want to try to emulate XYZ look. So there are some people, like on Instagram, there are some people that I've seen on Pinterest, of course, fairly popular. I don't have the names memorized at the moment, I'm sorry, but there's probably 2 or 3 that come to mind right now, and I'd have to circle back and give this to you guys. Do you think it is okay to wear the same suit for every occasion? Can one wear the same suit to a wedding and a funeral? It is possible. This is where, when shopping for a suit, whether it be the first time or adding to the collection, it just pays to, at least in the beginning, get that foundational core set of suits, or suit, if you will, that's going to give you the most versatility, right? If you know you have a favorite color of, green, that's nice, but do you want a green suit to every wedding and every funeral and every, it's, it's not the most versatile in that sense. So for me, I would say it is possible, but go for neutrality and versatility first. So navies, some kind of a medium gray is probably where I'm going to lean for most people. That's just my personal choice. Some people, they wear a lot of black, and that tends to work for them. I find that to be a little bit of a heavy color. So if you want to wear black to a funeral, makes sense. And wear black to a wedding, makes sense there too. But for every outing and for everything, might be a little serious. So that's why I like the blues and the grays personally. All right, sweaters or cardigans? As I wear a cardigan, I act really puzzled, right? No, I do like cardigans a lot. I do find that sweaters give me maybe a little bit more of an ability to layer. So in the fall and winter, will wear, a lot of like merino wools or cable knit sweaters and things like that with a button up, and then under a blazer, just a little bit easier to give the warmth, some color, some sense of casualness, but it won't be as bulky. I like the look of this. This is very comfortable as a cardigan. I've got this in a couple different colors. And I think that, depending on the material, it's something that you can really have be a statement piece and can be a lot of fun, but it is extremely casual. And depending on the material and how it gives and sits on the body, might be sometimes a little bit too bulky or too casual. So it depends on, I think, maybe what you're trying to achieve, what message you're trying to send. But I would say when in doubt, just get both. Kyle, what would you call your style? And how did you hook up with Raphael? What would I call my style? It's a great question. Kind of a weird juxtaposition of classic and modern, because I do like to blend the both. There is sort of in my head at least, a sense of preppiness, a little bit in how I want to present my outfits, but I don't want to reside strictly in that box. I like to then add in sneakers and jeans and caps and, funky sunglasses, or loud pocket squares from time to time, or I don't know, a cool watch or something like that. Maybe like some of like a Fort Belvedere leather gloves in a bright color, but I'm wearing that with a denim jacket and a hoodie. Like there's ways you can kind of manipulate all these different elements and add them to how you want it to be presented. So sometimes classic with influences of modern and casualness. But in terms of how I was able to meet up with Raphael, it's crazy. It's been a couple of years now, but it was at a meeting out of town, where there were a lot of menswear people getting together to kind of learn from each other and network essentially. And we were able to briefly speak, connected on the fact that we were both at the meeting, of course, but also from the same general city. And that's how that conversation got started. And I was able to then come in and speak to them about the position for being a presenter on Gentleman's Gazette. And that was a couple of years ago now. So it's kind of weird how wild the time flies by so quickly, but it's been a while. What are some of the ways working with Raphael and Preston has changed your outlook on fashion? And what has stayed the same for you? I would say it's probably changed a little bit in that I've been able to see more of a historical and, just broken down in terms of eras, like how everything has kind of transitioned from time period to time period and where a lot of things stem from. I mean, I knew what I liked. I didn't necessarily always know the history of it. And so that was certainly a bit of an eye-opener as I was being able to read through the scripts and kind of participate in making some of these videos, learning about where some of these things come from and why it is what it is, right? That was pretty intriguing. In terms of what stayed the same for me, I think I'm still, at my core, probably still someone who appreciates, a sense of some casual elements in my wardrobe. I'm still going to wear jeans. I'm still, all about boots and leather sneakers and things like that to kind of tone down some of that classic style a little bit, just personally. There are times, of course, where that's just not going to work. You have to kind of dress appropriately, but I think day to day when I'm out and about, I do want to always kind of infuse a little bit of the tier that just tends to work best. I think for me, my personality, so that stayed the same. My question to Kyle: you have a muscular build. How often do you have to resort to custom, made to measure? I have a similar build, and either items are too snug, tight, or are much too voluminous. I understand the dilemma. I would say whether it be off the rack or made to measure, custom, you gotta kind of know what works best for you and how long you're going to be in that particular phase of your physique, and then befriend a really good tailor, please. They're going to be your best friend. They can work wonders. And I think if you kind of know what you are wanting to achieve and you can partner with them to kind of get that corrected, it's a lot easier to find things, both, in my opinion, off the rack and made to measure, and then have things tweaked. Because it's probably never going to be 100% perfect right out of the gate, just because if you are muscular, you're probably going to be a little bit broader up top. a little more narrow in the middle, and not everybody is going to follow that same silhouette. So it's going to be a little difficult because depending on maybe whoever you're shopping from, if they lean more classic, they're probably going to try to push you into something that's a little bit more straight up and down. And if you go for something that's more modern, it's very trim in the middle where you like it, but then you've got no room in the back and the lats and the shoulders, nothing like that, right? So I think finding something that fits you where you're at your broadest, and then having someone shape that down in an appropriate way where you don't completely Frankenstein the outfit and chop it down where it looks crazy, but it looks good for you and for your physique and what you're after. And that's something that I've been able to achieve more so with made to measure personally. But I have been able to find some places that do off the rack, and I've been able to find things that work for my shoulders. And then I can kind of find a time to go to my local tailor and say, hey, I like everything about this, but this one section where it's just huge in the stomach, or the pants look, it's kind of silly here. Can we slim it down? Can we, dart the shirt here? Things like that. Next, what are your top 5 style tips for suits year round? I would say, I think keeping it simplistic will give you a lot of opportunity to wear it in multiple occasions. I think a single-breasted jacket with 2 buttons tends to work the best for most physiques. I think if you have a muscular build, considering a somewhat unconstructed or fully unconstructed jacket, if you've got the mass to support that, so you don't feel like you're having to over bulk or over what I like to jokingly say, look like you're wearing football pads on football pads, where it's just like, really overly squared on the shoulder, making sure that you are looking at your lapel width and making sure that it's not too slim or not too wide for your build. And for, of course, the ties that you may or may not wear, you want to make sure that that balance is there for both your accessories, but also for your general build. I think making sure that you don't follow trends too closely, even though I know I like trends from time to time. If it does not work for your build, it will look crazy. So if you don't have the build to wear something that's really narrow or really boxy, follow suit to where your body is, not necessarily for what the photo on Pinterest looks like. Just saying. And also, I think in terms of colors, paying attention to maybe what's going to give you the most options for some versatility. So if it's not in the budget to buy 27 different suits, go for something that's going to give you a lot of options to wear in multiple occasions. So again, I know I said it before, but some kind of a gray, like a medium to a charcoal, and some kind of a blue, probably something in the navy family. And then once you do that, it's a little easier to then say, I want to get a yellow suit or whatever, if you really want to. But get your neutrals first. What's my favorite lapel style? On the one hand, I preach about versatility a lot, so I say because of that, I have to say notch, but I would think for my build, and because I've already got my basics in notches already, I like to have a little more fun, and I do a lot of wide peak lapels, just for a little bit more flair and drama. It's kind of fun, depending on the color, the pattern of that particular sport coat or suit as well too. So that works for me, that works for my shoulders and chest, and I think that tends to just add a little bit more flair, so I don't feel like there's much of a need sometimes to wear as many accessories because there's already so much going on up top between the pocket square and the big lapels. But I love those on myself. If you are of a slimmer frame, maybe go for something that's not as broad, not as wide. And on dinner jackets, I also really enjoy a nice shawl. So I'm eyeballing actually getting one right now, and a velvet with a shawl lapel. It's gonna be kind of fun. But wide peak if you are narrow, and when all else fails, if you're not sure, my default for both myself and just everybody, I think it's safer just to go for a simple notch. All right. Do I ever worry about my beard taking down the formality of my outfits? It's something they always felt nervous about, and they hate being clean shaven. I wouldn't say I worry about it, but I do think about it, I think now a little bit less because I've had my beard for some time, but I've also kind of gone through some phases where I experimented with the length of the beard. So I feel like in years past it was a little bit fuller, a little bit thicker, and that did tend to, I think, over casualize the outfit. And I would agree with you, if your beard is longer, that's why that might be something you're feeling. So maybe considering just taking down some of the bulk if you do have something that's really full. For me, keeping it a little bit more lined up and somewhat short, I think is a little easier to then still stay somewhat dressed up and somewhat casual when you want to be casual without overcommitting to one end of the spectrum. But I think in terms of not wanting to be clean shaven, I mean, I think for me, That's a personal choice. I can understand that everyone's face shape is different and what you feel about that in the mirror. I don't mind being clean shaven. It's been so long since I've probably walked around like that, so I probably look like a bit of a baby face. I think it's about you and how comfortable you are in your own, you know, reflection in the mirror. What that's, seeing, what you're seeing back to yourself, excuse me, is not what you want to see. Then I can understand wanting to keep the beard, but consider maybe just playing with the thickness of the beard a little bit and trying to see if that helps to maintain the formality that you're after. All right, favorite places to get suits and jeans. So, as many of you guys might have known from over the videos, as I keep mentioning, I've worked in retail for some time. So, I have a lot of kind of just common places that anybody could access that I would get things from. I spent a lot of time between Brooks Brothers and Hugo Boss and Indochino, things like that too, where I would get suits made or off the rack. And that's always kind of been in the last couple of years where I've gotten a lot of my wardrobe. But in addition to that, there are some other places that I'm at least experimenting with or looking to experiment with. I think for jeans, it's been a while since I've had like some earth-shatteringly amazing jeans. So I know a lot of places are gonna, or a lot of people are gonna probably say, everyday places like Levi's or things like that too. I think I like to get things from the brand J Brand. I like Hudson. I like Seven for All Mankind. And there was a store that I visited when I was in Illinois. I don't think it's there anymore. But they sold a lot of denim from Japanese manufacturers. I had no idea what brand it was, but I do remember this a couple of years ago that I tried them on and it just felt like butter. It was incredibly comfortable, just incredible denim, and I am on the search for something like that again. So if anybody has any recommendations, let me know. But in terms of just day-to-day, what you can access here in the States, that's of somewhat decent quality, where it's not going to, fall apart crazy or anything like that. I like raw denim as well too. I don't necessarily think that I've got the patience to break them in, so I tend to go for things that have a little bit more ease and comfort out of the gate. So the brands I mentioned before tend to offer that to me. But if somebody has any ways around the break-in period for the raw denim where they're kind of stiff for a while. All right, this person says, how in the heck did you get a burgundy overcoat and where can I get one? So the one I have is years old. I bought it off the rack. I think that was from Hugo Boss. And it was just a seasonal color choice that they made. And I think that they elected to get that particular material and color probably a year or two before they even presented it to the rest of us. So I think that color choices from big brands are made, earlier on, and then we see it when we see it. But I would say maybe going for a place that can offer you some kind of a made-to-measure experience might be something to consider. That way you don't have to wait around for if and when somebody decides to make a particular burgundy in a shade that you like, and then hope and pray that it fits, right? Maybe look online and seeing if there's someplace local that offers something like that. That way you get the fit and the color that you're after. If you don't want to do that, there are plenty of places that you can search for, perhaps locally, whether that be like a thrift store, whether it be some kind of a coat store overall. Do they carry other brands, other colors that are a little bit unconventional? See if something like that is near you. Even online, there's a lot of people doing all kinds of things between like Poshmark and eBay. And so there's a lot of places you can search for something like that. But I would try to find some way to get something created and seeing if that fits into your budget. That way you don't have to kind of guess and wait around too long. How do you first get into the world of classic menswear? So I first got into the world of classic menswear when I stumbled into a Brooks Brothers store. I don't think I really even knew what the store was. I was bored and just browsing in the mall. And I ended up talking to who ended up being a coworker of mine. They liked myself, my style, I guess. And I don't remember how the conversation entirely went, but we ended up talking about a possible part-time position, and I started working for Brooks Brothers. I had always had an interest in menswear, in classic menswear, but I don't think I really paid that much attention to it until I started working in that store. And I was with them off and on for a couple of years, and that led into other roles and other companies and other things. And then now here I am with Gentleman's Gazette. But that's how it started, and that was probably, I want to say about 15 years ago. Who's the best dressed actor in Hollywood today? If I gotta choose, okay. Probably be really easy to say it's one of the 57 Chris's and one of the Marvel movies. But no, I think, is it Eddie Redmayne who's in Jackal? If I'm pronouncing the name incorrectly, I apologize. And then the actor Glenn Powell, who I recently saw in Twister. Um, but I think that maybe has more to do with, them just keeping it somewhat classic, not doing anything overly ostentatious. So, at least from what I've seen. But those two come to mind as of recently when I watched, I think it was the Golden Globe. So, what is the favorite garment that I own? I would say, in terms of garments, coats in general, I don't necessarily have a favorite. I just like all my coats. I'm a big coat person. I don't know why. I just really like them. I especially like coats with big collars. So some kind of like an officer's coat, overcoats, things like that. Actually, I've got a army green one, double-breasted. That's kind of fun. I've worn a couple of times. And my camel overcoat. But I like coats. What do I like to do when I'm not filming Gentleman's Gazette videos? I like to discover new music. I like to try different foods, different restaurants from time to time. I like to explore different areas in my neighborhood. I like to go to the gym, I like to exercise from time to time. And if the weather's nice enough, I think sometimes going out and just finding different places to take abstract photography, it's kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good assortment of what I like to do. I think there are other things that happen from time to time, but those are probably the go-tos. Thanks for watching the AMA video today, guys. It was a lot of fun to kind of connect with you and see what things you were interested in learning about myself and, how I got started and what I'm interested in. It's kind of fun to be able to sit down and talk with you guys about that. Hope that provided some of the insight that you might have been looking for. But continue to watch Gentleman's Gazette. We've got some great things coming for you guys that I think you're going to really be interested in seeing.